I'm the project director for a large Ministry of Education funded project called Te Kotahitanga, the aim of which is to improve the educational achievement of Māori students in mainstream secondary schools. Mainstream education, where 96% of our children are still educated, is problematic for Māori students. It's an enormous site of struggle for Māori to maintain identity, to maintain te reo Māori and tikanga Māori in those domains. At that time, the Ministry were very concerned about this, and their objective at that time, as it remains, was to improve achievement for all students and to reduce disparities. So they came to us and we negotiated this contract back in about 2000. We began the project by talking with young Māori students, their teachers and their principals and their families about the major impediments and the major carriers and ways that Māori students' achievement could be improved in schools. We worked from there and we developed what was called an effective teaching profile, around which we built a professional development program. We've been doing ongoing research both on how to implement that and how well it's going in the schools over the last 4 or 5 years now, really. The next big question that came up for us was, so if you can actually make a difference in classrooms and you can start moving towards the whole schools reforming themselves and changing the way that classroom relationships and interactions take place between teachers and Māori students, well, how are you going to keep it going? This whole issue of sustainability came up. So I approached Ngā Pae te Māramatanga for some funding to do some background research, if you like, some in-depth background research. And that was to look at this whole issue of sustainability. What's the literature telling us about what constitutes sustainability?
For Te Kotahitanga to be properly sustainable, it must be able to withstand changes in government, must be able to withstand changes in educational fashions and theories. And it is, I think, critical to that schools actually own the project and schools want to do it. We've looked at a range of literature from overseas, principally because this field is relatively new in New Zealand, to answer the question of what conditions are required in a school to make a reform project self-sustaining, and secondly, what are the conditions necessary to replicate that project in subsequent schools.
Sustainability is real important to us, particularly with our Phase 3 schools, the original 12 schools, because they are now moving from adopting the innovation into building their own capacity to carry on what they have learned through the innovation called Te Kotahitanga and do it themselves over the coming years and have it embedded into the culture of the school. The money that we get from Ngā Pae has been most valuable in helping us to explore particularly the leadership role of the principals, and we have found out that that is a vital role to the sustainability of this project.
The second big project that the Ngā Pae te Māramatanga funded was a look at leadership in the schools. We identified from our research into what constitutes sustainability that one of the most important elements of sustainability was in fact leaders. And this whole notion of what is a professional leader, what is a principal and a lead facilitator as a professional leader in the school, what does it look like? What does it constitute?
Originally, we saw the principals as largely the resource managers for the project. However, we found out that their involvement in the project was much more important than that they were truly a part of the facilitation team and a leader in the school. And they really needed those very active participatory roles in order for the project to sustain.
For Te Kotahitanga to be implemented well in schools, it's got to be a driving force from the principal, and I've been lucky in the fact that I've been in 2 schools where the principals have been behind it. HODs and HOFs, head of faculties, sometimes they're a bit resistant because we're asking a little bit more of them. You know, we want to know exactly how the Māori students are doing in their departments. We want them to implement some baseline testing in literacy and numeracy, and we want to see where those kids are, and that takes a little bit more time. When systems and structures in the school start aligning to Te Kotahitanga, it informs teachers better of where they are at and where they can go to next.
Now you have to realize in New Zealand schools, which are common with a lot of Western European, North American schools, are largely dominated by white European descent males. A number of our lead facilitators are Māori females. This goes counter to the typical hierarchy in schools. So we are upsetting the normal balance in schools, and being able to study this and begin to understand this is real important.
Leadership needs to become, instead of managerial, it needs to become much more of the professional leadership type, much more distributed and much more of a transforming type of leadership. The objective what we've been looking for such a long time is starting to happen. We're starting to see in the schools that we're working in changes in Māori student achievement. We're not yet seeing the mythical closing of the gaps because it's too early yet, that takes time. But at last we're seeing that Māori students, instead of being on a downward trajectory and Pākehā students on an upward trajectory, we've now got Māori students moving towards onto the same trajectory as non-Māori students, which is wonderful news.
It's not only Māori students that do benefit from this project, although we do focus on Māori students. Every child in the classroom benefits from it and the disparity starts decreasing, the gap starts lessening.
So what we're doing is really out on the edge, and it's becoming a hallmark for how to do research with Indigenous people. But beyond that, what we found when we went to America is the African Americans and the Latino Hispanic communities are very interested in our work also. So this work is really groundbreaking and setting a new standard for how we can do research and professional development in an iterative feedback basis so that we can improve the achievement of our Indigenous children in schools.
So Ngā Pai, or Te Maramatanga, has been extremely useful to provide us with funding to probe into, first of all, for us to develop an hypothesis of what might constitute sustainability in the schools that we're working in, and then to actually do a more detailed probe study, an in-depth study of what constitutes leadership in schools that are undergoing educational reform.